Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Our topic today will be an introduction to Dynamics 365 Supply Chain Insights. My name is Peggy, and I'll be your moderator today. We're broadcasting this session through Teams live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name, email address, and/or phone number may be viewable by other session participants in the attendee list. By joining, you're agreeing to this experience. The recording will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout today's presentation, and there will be time at the end for further questions. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Omar Chowdhury, Principal Group Program Manager, and John Cartwright, Senior Program Manager. Omar, over to you.
Hi, thanks, Peggy. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today to learn about supply chain insights. I really hope we are able to give you all the information you need to be able to get into supply chain insights and deep dive into it. And so today we'll be taking you through kind of why we built supply chain insights, what were some of the things we heard from our customers, and getting into kind of the overview of the product, and then giving you kind of a deep dive demo, followed by a roadmap session, and then we'll get into Q&A as Peggy mentioned. So without further ado, I'll just jump in. So, why build a product like this? I think many of us have heard about the challenges that have been going on with supply chain disruptions, everything from canal blockages to Texas freezing over. I'm sure everybody's heard of COVID and some of the supply chain challenges that have come out of that. So there's all sorts of different disruptions that have come about, and what many of our customers were struggling with was how can they be agile and be able to make business decisions with all of these different disruptions, and be able to make the right decisions and optimize their supply chains and essentially build more resilient supply chains. So what were some of the challenges that we heard directly from our customers was that oftentimes they had visibility into their tier 1 suppliers, or they at least knew who they were, but they would lose visibility beyond that tier 1 supplier. So the multi-tier supplier network would become very fuzzy after tier 1. They also had challenges understanding where their bottlenecks were and where some of their diamond-shaped supply chains were happening, where there were many suppliers getting supplies from a single tier 2 supplier, where if that supplier was disrupted, then they would have disruptions across many of their tier 1. So where were the bottlenecks? Oftentimes when they were even trying to communicate with their supplier network, there was challenges with interoperability and understanding one another because there's no single standard and schema structure. Different suppliers of their tier 1 suppliers are at different levels of maturity as far as technology. Some are very technology savvy, have systems in place, and others are still on Excel. And so oftentimes, even when they would build a lot of reporting and get data from these suppliers, it wasn't really in real time. The reports didn't really match up to what was on the ground reality. And so it was very difficult for them to make the correct business decisions. And on top of that, many of the things that they would build or the reports they would build were very reactive in nature. And so it's when a disruption has happened. And so these were some of the challenges and that the industry was facing. So why do we think Microsoft is best to be positioned to build an application like this? There are other applications out there in the market that try to do one or several of the different things that we are going to show you today in supply chain insights. But really, Microsoft brings together a whole host of products and capabilities from our Azure stack and the ability to scale to our Power Platform and the ability to have a low-code, no-code experience, whether that's for data ingestion or that's for extending the application, or our developer tools, as well as the ability to tie into our Dynamics 365 products. And then when there is a disruption happening, the ability to collaborate with teams. In addition to this, we've had kind of an industry-specific or industry approach. Supply Chain Insights is a part of the manufacturing cloud, and essentially the data model that we're using for the manufacturing cloud aligns to the data model that we have built Supply Chain Insights off. So really, we have a lot of capabilities to come and pull together a solution that really is differentiated and can help customers become essentially more predictive in nature. And that really gets us into the next piece, is that how do we really look at this product and what are we focused on? So the focus is really on data first. How can we bring the data from the various systems that you have in your organizations, bring it together, be able to harmonize that data, and be able to then provide some basic insights from that data. Then, be able to take a lot of the signals that we are bringing from our partners as well as from Bing and overlay that data. And on top of that, leverage the power of Microsoft's both AI capabilities as well as AI resources to build models that then can give you insights into what's happening in your supply chain, and moreover, help give you insights that are more predictive in nature. So less reactive and more predictive on what could happen, and so that you can then go in and collaborate with those stakeholders to make sure that you can mitigate any potential disruption that might happen or a disruption that is happening now. So these are kind of the three pillars that that we focused on when building this application. Now, this product really is kind of like a type of flywheel in a sense that our goal is that you first bring your data, we give you visibility into your supply chain, we have external signals that can layer on top and give you that visibility. In addition to that, we provide you with some base analytics. And once we provided you with that base analytics and AI models and those potential disruptions that could happen or are happening, then you're able to collaborate. And once you collaborate, whether you're going to collaborate both with internal stakeholders and external stakeholders, the results of that collaboration, we can learn from them and build further models, analytics, and insights that then we can add to the visibility and analytics. So it's really kind of like a flywheel, and that's really the intent of what we're trying to do here with the product. One thing I'd like to land on before we jump into the demo is that this product is really built as a participant-to-participant network. What you'll really see in the product is a lot of supplier scenarios and scenarios on how we can get insights for suppliers. But really, we built it so that you can every participant is an equal participant. So Microsoft, our devices team, is using this product, and they can invite their suppliers, whether it's a chip manufacturer or a case manufacturer. And once that chip manufacturer receives an invite and actually goes in and signs up for Supply Chain Insights, much like LinkedIn, you are an equal participant and you have your own account, and you can start inviting your own suppliers in addition to collaborating with Microsoft. So it's really, we like to think of it as a kind of a LinkedIn for supply chain, but you can bring both suppliers as well as invite customers, and the idea and the thinking is that you'd also be able to bring distribution companies and freight providers and other participants in the future. So one key focus area that we wanted to land on is that all of the ERP systems and data systems, whether WMS systems or logistics systems you have, we want to really be able to bring that data in and be able to give you base insights without you sending any friend requests or inviting anybody into your network, so that you get a certain amount of value out of the right away for your supply chain and to help you build a more resilient supply chain. The second aspect of this is really around the collaboration, which John will demo for you guys, is really around you're able to bring your data in and collaborate with other organizations. And once you brought your data in once, you can then share that that data or aspects of that data with other organizations. And we would manage a lot of the censorship between this data. The main thing is that you always have control of your data in the process and can share it with participants that you approve of and agree to share it with. So that's one thing that we hope you'll kind of get out of the demo coming up. So with that being said, I'll hand it off to John to get into the demo.
Sounds great. Thanks, Omar. All right, so upon signing into SCI, this is the homepage that folks would see. Up top, we have some basic onboarding steps, some partner notifications, a supply chain map, as well as some news for articles that might be relevant to companies in your supply chain, as well as some videos to assist in onboarding, as well as additional resources around documentation and a link to our communities page for customer feedback. And these videos, just for onboarding, there's about 6 of them, and they're very short videos, only about 1 minute to 2 minutes in length, that just go over various features within SCI, just to get the user excited to use these different features and comfortable with understanding what they're there for and how best to utilize them. So to start out, want to focus first on the company profile page. So upon signing up to SCI, a user would come in and fill out this basic information about their company. So for the purposes of this demo, we can see that this company's name is AdventureWorks. One thing that I want to call your attention to is this profile visibility toggle. So by default, it will be set to private. And as Omar mentioned, a company can utilize SCI, upload their own data to SCI, and start to get benefits as far as analytics, insights, a visual representation of their supply chain on the map page. But as a second step to unlock further value of SCI, that's really when you connect with your suppliers and your customers and start to share data to further enrich some of those analytics and recommendations ultimately. So besides general information on the company profile, an end user can also upload various financial information about their company, as well as certifications. We have a number of certifications, as well as any corporate social responsibility certifications that the company has. So next, after a company's kind of uploaded information about their company and filled out the company profile, like Omar mentioned, SCI really starts with the quality of the data that we have uploaded. So switching over to the data upload, if we go under admin, we have data import. So here's where we can see the number of different types of entities that we have, as well as the different categories of data underneath. So let's pretend that we're going to upload production order data. So SCI is utilizing Power Platform and specifically these Power Query connectors. And we're currently working on adding in a connector for SAP as well as Oracle's. So those connectors should be coming soon within our product. So let's say, for example, that I, as AdventureWorks, have data that I want to upload to SCI in an Azure SQL database. So I'd select the Azure SQL database, I'd enter in the credentials, and then after entering in the credentials and connecting, I would then see this Power Query view. where I could select individual tables. So for example, we're uploading product information. So after selecting that table, this next step is really important because what it does is we're essentially mapping our data as AdventureWorks to a common data framework that SCI would understand. So I can do this manually by selecting color, maybe product height, and there's also a button for AutoMap, which will do a name comparison for the column names of my data to the column names that SCI is expecting. And then after I hit OK and hit next, it will start that mapping process. I'm going to switch to the next tab just to expedite that. So after the data has been mapped, I can then set a refresh cadence. If it's a one-off data entity that I'm uploading, such as the list of my warehouse locations, that might be okay for having it just be a manual one-time upload. But if it's production or product data or order data or something that might be needed to be refreshed on a more regular cadence, I can set up a refresh once it's connected to that data source, all the way down to the minute time frame, so I can get pretty much near real-time data being fed into SCI. And this is really important because in talking with some of our early customers, we've seen that some of them are still using Excel spreadsheets and getting emails with Excel spreadsheets every Monday for the next week's orders. So this is a really important feature within SCI just to kind of reduce some of those tedious actions that supply chain managers currently have to take. So from there, after we've uploaded our data, the next feature that I want to talk about is how do we actually share that data with other partners within SCI. So SCI has kind of a two-step process for sharing data. The first step is to connect with another company and become partners. And you can think of that as very similar to sending a friend request. And then the second step, after you've established that initial relationship, is to create a data collaboration. So real quick on partners, you can see here, this is a list of all companies that have set their company profile. If you remember in the company profile page, they've set their visibility to public. So that means that other members that are on SCI, they'd be able to search for their name and connect with them. And when they connect with them, they can specify if they're a vendor or a customer and enter in a unique customer vendor ID for that company, as well as add a personalized note. And then once they hit connect on the, so for Alpine Ski House, they would get a message or a notification that says, hey, AdventureWorks wants to connect with you. Here's a personalized note. You can either choose to accept or decline that connection request. Additionally, when you connect with a company, you will be able to see kind of their basic information that was populated in the company profile page, but nothing else. From there, so we talked a little bit about the public partners. We talked a little bit about incoming requests and sent requests. Once they accept that request, they will then land in the My Partners page. So you can see that AdventureWorks currently has 5 different partners that they've connected with. But we recognize that not everyone is going to immediately be on SCI. If I am a major manufacturer, I know that as we roll out SCI, not all of my suppliers are going to have SCI accounts. So I also have the ability to import partners, to bulk invite them to SCI, or I can invite them in a one-off manner where I'd enter in their name, their email, again, the relationship that I have with them, and then click invite. And what that's going to do is it's going to trigger an email to be sent to this email address that basically invites them to onboard to SCI. And then once they onboard, they will automatically be connected with me as a partner. So once we've established that initial relationship with another company, we can then move down into data collaborations. So we can see that AdventureWorks currently has 2 data collaborations. I'm going to focus on the daily supply forecast. So currently you can see that right now this data collaboration is just between AdventureWorks and this other company called Fabricam Parts Europe Northwest. Now, let's say that I, as AdventureWorks, want daily supply information from more than one of my European suppliers. So what I could do is I could add another supplier that I've partnered with to this data collaboration. And again, this will trigger an invite to Fabricam Parts Europe Northwest, or excuse me, to Parts World Europe Parts, and it will ask them to share this data with myself as AdventureWorks. So you can see that the status is they haven't yet shared that data, so we don't have any visibility into what they've shared. We can see that both of these companies are vendors from AdventureWorks' perspective. And within this, there's kind of 3 major tabs. So the first one is who all am I asking to share data? Who all am I asking to share data with me as far as partners goes? The next one is what data am I requesting of these partners? And then the last one is what data from AdventureWorks am I sharing with these partners? And it's important to note that even though there's 2 partners in this data collaboration, we can add as many partners as we want to it. And all of the data that I'm requesting from Parts World is only going to be shared with me as AdventureWorks. Similarly, all the data that I'm requesting that Fabricam shares with me as AdventureWorks is only shared with me as AdventureWorks. Parts World never sees Fabricam's data and vice versa. And then, like I mentioned, I can go through and similar to the data import page, I can select what entities that I'm requesting that they share with me. And then similarly on the data shared tab, I can select what data I want to share with them as my suppliers. And it could be that I just don't want to share any data with them. So I can save these changes. We can see that was updated. So now once we've uploaded data, like Omar mentioned, we could have users of SCI that simply want to upload their own data to get analytics and insights into their supply chain. But once we set up these data collaborations, that's when we really get some enhanced analytics and really greater visibility into a supply chain. So to start off with, let's go up to the map page. So here we can see a geographical representation of my supply chain. You can see that there's really 2 different types of site colors. So the blue sites are my company, AdventureWorks, production plants and warehouses. And then the gray pins are vendors' sites and vendors' production plants. One other thing that I want to call out is I am able to filter this by facility type, as well as filter it by like the tier of my supply chain, just so that way I can zoom in where necessary. You'll also notice that for each one of these sites, if I go to the list view, I can see all of the sites as well as different scores for those sites. So if I select into an individual site, I can see that this site in Florida has a risk score of 8. And like Omar mentioned earlier, we are partnering with some companies to get risk data specifically around weather. So you can see that this site in Florida is at risk for high winds, hailstorm, tornado, and potentially wildfires, but not as much for volcano or seismic activity. And currently, this is just external data around weather risk. But as we continue to build out our product in GA, we are looking to bring in other types of risk, specifically around financial risk and logistics risk around potentially like port congestion and items like that. And we'll bring those risk signals into the map page if it makes sense to display that on a map or geographically. And if not, then we'll bring it into our analytics page that we'll cover next. One last thing to touch on the maps page, I am able to select a certain site and then see what orders are flowing through that site, as well as the details for those orders. And lastly, just on the topic of weather risks, I can toggle this map to take a look at what is the latent risk for tornadoes to hit given sites. So as you can expect, there's a higher risk for tornadoes in central US versus some of the coasts. And if I were to switch it over to seismic, we can see that there's a much higher risk for seismic activities along the coast versus central US. And one other type of weather risk that we don't currently have live, but the team is working on, is the risk of natural catastrophes, like ongoing hurricanes or earthquakes, just so that way we can send an alert to the supply chain manager and say, hey, there's an ongoing earthquake that's impacting your tier 1 supplier. As a supply chain manager, I'd want to be made aware of this, so that way I can reach out to my counterpart at that company and check in on any existing orders or items like that. So weather data is one type of external risk signal that we're pulling in. Another type of external risk signal is news. So we've partnered with the big news team to create a curated news feed that is specific to articles that a supply chain manager would be interested in, as well as curated specific to their supply chain. So essentially what we're doing is we're looking at the list of imported vendors, the list of imported customers, as well as some of the partnerships that a user makes within SCI. And then we're searching Bing News for all articles that are relevant to those companies, and not only all articles that are relevant to those companies, but articles that are relevant in a supply chain manner. And we're doing this by looking at keywords in the title and description. We're looking at the URL to see how credible that source is. And we're also categorizing the articles into high-level categories that a supply chain manager might be interested in, such as product news, or if there's any bankruptcies or acquisitions or any sort of disruptions. So we can see for this top article that it is around a fire. So that would likely be categorized as a disruption. And we can see that it's impacting the supplier called JR Automation. So if we go in to view the news article, we can see that there was a fire at JR Automation. So as a supply chain manager, if this company is one of my suppliers, I might reach out to my counterpart there just to check in to see if I need to update any existing orders or any forecasts based on this disruption. So last but not least, I want to drop down to our analytics page. Let's switch over here. So for our analytics, there we go. So for our analytics, currently we have 5 tabs. This first tab, the product map, maps out the relationship between products, parts, and warehouses. I could also filter for specific products or specific parts. So if I were to look at this speaker assembly unit, I can see what are all of the parts that make up this product, as well as what are the warehouses that I source these parts from. Scrolling down to the bottom, I can also see all in-flight shipments and whether they're on time, at risk to be late, or early. Moving over to the shipping tab, I can also see a list of all of the parts that I have by delivery status. Again, are they late, at risk to be delayed, early, or on time, as well as track in-transit shipments for these parts. I can also filter by time range and also filter by vendor, product, warehouses, etc. Moving over to vendor performance. Currently, this is our first iteration of evaluating vendors. Currently, we're just doing that by what's the percentage of late deliveries. So we can see that none of these suppliers have actually fallen behind on late deliveries, so they're all showing as green. And last but not least, we have supply and demand, where I can see a list of all of the parts that I have, what is the current stock, what's in transit, what's my committed supply, and what's the overall demand for that part. And as Omar mentioned, again, this is just our first iteration, but we want to build out a digital twin of each customer's supply chain. So with this, I can drill into the various products that my company creates. I can further drill into what are all the different parts that comprise that product, who is supplying me those parts, which vendors, and what warehouses are those parts coming from. So if I were to select an individual part, I can see what's my current stock, what's my committed supply, and what's the overall demand for this. And we also have supply and demand simulations here. So if I were to artificially decrease my demand and increase my supply, then we can see what effect that would have on my projected inventory. And again, this is just our first iteration. The team is actively working to pull in additional points of external data like logistics risk and financial risk to combine that with some of the other risks that I shared earlier around weather and news to give a supply chain manager really a better picture on what are some of the risks in their supply chain and eventually what actions can they take to make their supply chain more resilient. Omar, would you like to add anything, or I'll probably hand it back to you to talk more about our roadmap?
Well, awesome. Thanks, John. Okay, so yeah, so this was a great demo, and this basically what John has showed you is essentially what we have today in the preview. So the connectors he mentioned, the 3 connectors that we are rolling out with, and there's another 2 that we'll be adding Sage and Infor as well, on top of the SAP, Oracle, and SCM connectors. And so with that being said, where are we going towards GA? We want to bring in sea freight logistics risk. So this is risk around ports, around what is the status of certain products that you might have in transit over the sea. So giving some sort of risk signals around that, and more predictive risk signals around things that might be happening in ports, and as well as getting into financial risk. So as you start getting a view of your multi-tier supply chain, it's very important to kind of also keep track of the financial risk of each of these suppliers that you have. There is a lot of correlation between financial risk and quality. So as companies face hard financial times, product quality also is kind of correlated to that. So we want to bring in some visibility into financial risk. The multi-tier network, these are some of the, and digital twin, what if analysis, and optimizers. This is where we really want to use the power of our AI resources at Microsoft to be able to give you a view of what your multi-tier supply chain looks like. What John demoed for you is the supply chain map view of your digital twin, and what we look to bring is kind of more of a graph view. With that, we also want to bring in some AI capabilities around giving you what the future or what your supply chain may look like if you don't have all of the data, if you don't have your tier 2 or your tier 3, what is our best guess? As well as being able to let you change certain nodes around and be able to have kind of do what if analysis of, if I change my supply chain, or if I had a contingency plan where I change a supplier, what does that look like, and be able to take a snapshot and see what happens. So these are some of the things that we want to bring as far as our kind of AI capabilities in the October timeframe, and then get into the ability to really collaborate with your suppliers. So being able to survey them, maybe survey them in a way that you might want to qualify them, or even survey them when you see a potential disruption happening. And this is more of your standard survey capability, but what we're really looking to do is make this much more intelligent and automated, and driven by some of our AI capabilities. So where John had demoed the smart news, there are definitely opportunities where a supply manager may not be able to even read through all of the news articles or things that might have come up. But if we have the ability to read these news articles and build patterns and say that there is a high probability that that there is a strike happening, and that strike, when we see certain factors come into play, that means an 80% or more disruption in that company's capacity to produce, in which case we could automatically send the survey to the tier 1 supplier. So it could be happening to your tier 3, tier 2, or your tier 1, but because we only have a friend request and a relationship with a tier 1, we would send it to a tier 1 and say, hey, are you going to be okay? This is something we see one of your suppliers as, and so that you can then collaborate with them. And if they say yes, there is an issue, then this could trigger kind of a case where we can then all bring in all of the stakeholders, leverage the power of teams and be able to track what are some of the mitigation actions we took, and then be able to also learn from those mitigation and actions and collaborations and bring them into some of the automation that we are looking to drive. And then also have a connection to our D365 applications, a deeper connection with them. So this is what we're looking to roll out with in the October timeframe as we move into general availability. I will. So, just to kind of wrap up, the idea, the real intent and idea around supply chain insights is to make sure that we can give supply chain managers, logistic managers, clear visibility into their supply chain, be able to help them become more proactive and give them more predictive capabilities rather than reactive capabilities, so that then they can make decisions and business decisions with greater lead times and have greater options and be able to optimize their supply chain. And with that, we hope that they will be able to build much more resilient supply chains. So, I encourage everybody here to, go through and sign up. And if you have customers that would like to try the public preview, please go sign up. We are releasing this kind of in waves, but you'll definitely receive communications if you come to the sign up and be a part of our communities and other forums, so that we can keep you up to speed on some of the new features that are coming out, as well as some of the information around licensing. So I know that there were some questions that were in the chat around licensing. So this is something that we are still working out and looking to bake out as we get closer to GA, and we'll definitely release more information maybe 2 months before GA. Essentially, everybody can come in and try the product right now for free during the public preview timeframe, and I will give kind of the overview and the general train of thought that we're having around licensing, because there are some questions around, would the suppliers be free to join? So yes, there is going to be the ability for you to come into Supply Chain Insights and be able to do and have access with little to no bar of entry, with basically a freemium version. And so if you come in and you're a large S500, which some of our preview customers are, including Microsoft Devices team, they would probably pay for some additional capabilities or to use the full horsepower of SCI. But as they invite their 150 suppliers in China and different places around the world, those suppliers could come on board and be able to use some capabilities of supply chain insights as well. And in addition, if Microsoft has a data collaboration project request that comes from the devices team to its suppliers, those suppliers would be able to respond to that and provide that, import that data and send it over. So the idea is not to make this something that's expensive, something that's difficult, and that has lots of paywalls. But it's something that we just need to continue working out as we get to general availability. And if you've signed up, then you will receive those newsletters and communications as we go along. There was you go for it, John.
Yeah. I was just going to say the only other two questions that that I see is, can a company be both a vendor and a customer?
And so yes, you can. A company can be both. You can have a relationship with a company that's both a customer and a vendor. And I don't know, John had maybe John, you touched on that, but do you want to add anything?
Nope, I think that's it. And I think that was all the questions that we have. So folks have other questions, feel free to type them in now, but if not, anything else that we want to share, Omar?
No, we're just really excited to work with everybody, and please give your feedback as you sign up. We'll have kind of channels and communities that you'll have access to, and give us your thoughts, ideas, and feedback. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to learn about supply chain insights.
All right. Thanks, guys. We will be giving our attendees a few minutes back today in their schedule. But before you go, if every attendee could have a look in the live event Q&A panel where I've posted a link to a short survey. We would love your feedback on today's session and hear what you'd like to see in future events. So we really do appreciate your participation there. As a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. All attendees will receive a link to that when it's available, and look for your email. Look for it in your email there. So a big thank you to our attendees and our presenters today. Have a great day or evening wherever you are, and stay safe.